What is up, everybody? Welcome to the 10th episode of the Life Hack Podcast, Bite Size Wisdom. And honestly, 10 episodes in, I didn't expect that this one would be the hardest to record. When I started this podcast, I was starting it for growth, perspective, family, life just moving forward even when things just aren't perfect. We've laughed here, we've had some real conversations, and we talk about building something better day by day and just consistency. But today just feels different because lately I've been watching something happen online in conversations that I have with people, and even during moments that we're supposed to bring people together. And it's just been sitting so heavy on me. I kept telling myself, ignore it, I'm overthinking it, stay in my lane, let's just talk about the lighter things. But the more I hear it, the harder it became for me to just shut my mouth about it. I keep hearing people throw so much hate at America. Not criticism, not challenge, just pure hate. And honestly, every time I hear it, it just stops me in my tracks. Because loving this country, or even just appreciating it, suddenly feels like something that you have to apologize for. And I do not think that's normal. So I almost didn't even record this episode because the second you say what I'm about to say, people assume they already know who you are, what you believe, and what side you're on. But this isn't about sides. This is not about politics. It's about perspective and maybe some gratitude. And it's about something that's just been sitting on my chest long enough that I can't keep quiet anymore. So I'm just going to say it. I just love this country. USA all the way. And before anybody decides what that means, just stay with me for a minute and hear me out. I don't love America blindly. I love it knowingly. Because loving something doesn't mean just pretending it's perfect. It means understanding its flaws and choosing not to walk away anyway. America was never born clean. Freedom was written down before we fully understood it. And equality was promised long before we knew just how to live it. We fought a civil war against ourselves, trying to figure out what those words actually meant. We lived through slavery, segregation, complete injustice, protests, riots, assassinations, and wars. Generations demanding we become better than we were. Nothing about progress here was smooth. And that matters. Because this country didn't grow through silence, it grew through arguments. Disagreements just isn't a flaw of America and what we are discussing. It's part of the design. Free speech wasn't created to protect popular opinions. It exists to, have the uncomfortable ideas not get buried. Every generation pushed against the last. Every generation believed that the country was at its breaking point. And somehow we kept correcting course, slowly, painfully, and completely public. We didn't erase our failures. We argued about them in the open. That's rare in human history, and that's powerful. But somewhere along the way, disagreement changed. We stopped arguing to understand people and started arguing to destroy one another. Now everything feels like outrage. Everything feels like betrayal, and even moments meant to unite us, like the Olympics, somehow turn into another battlefield. And that's one of the parts that hit me the hardest. Watching athletes stand on a world stage wearing the country's name across their chests, saying it's hard to represent America because they disagree with the current administration. Just, I kept thinking, you're not representing 4 years of politics. Administrations come and go, as much as you want to agree or disagree. You're representing generations of people who built a system where someone like you could rise, compete, speak freely, and even criticize the country publicly without fear. Only here you can openly disagree while still being protected while doing it. That's not weakness on our side. That's pretty extraordinary. But maybe this is uncomfortable to say, but I think we've lost perspective. We live in one of the safest, most opportunity filled moments in human history. And somehow many people feel more powerless than ever. When survival isn't the daily fight, meaning becomes the fight. And sometimes outrage fills that space. America starts to look pretty cruel when you stop recognizing what it's actually giving you. Not everyone, you know, who struggles is privileged. Real hardships exist, but there's a difference between hardship and contempt. Between criticism and rejection. And what honestly breaks me isn't the criticism, it's the contempt for this country. The casual way people now say they hate America, or how they're embarrassed to fly the world's greatest flag. The way flags burn while people cheer like the destruction of it equals depth in their position. Because that flag was never a symbol of perfection. It's a symbol of cost. It's covered coffins. It stood behind marches demanding change. It flew over, the people who fought for your freedoms and make this country live up to its own promises. I'm not asking you to worship it, but treating it like it means nothing tells me history has just become too distant. We're weak. It's too easy to forget. For me, loving this country isn't political. It's personal. It's about building something instead of tearing everything down. You know, being a better father, creating opportunity for people, and using freedom instead of resenting it. You know, freedom isn't proven by how loudly we complain. It's proven by what we build with it. And somewhere along the way, sorry to say this might be tough, something shifted. It used to feel like voices were earned, built through effort, responsibility, and actual experience. Now the loudest voices belong to the people doing the least. They're not creating, they're not building, they're not sacrificing anything. They're just reacting. Endless scrolling, endless sharing. You guys know who you are. Endless outrage recycled from yesterday like it still defines today. History matters, absolutely, but living in it doesn't build a future. And somehow the people shouting the most about what's wrong with everything are just often the ones that are standing still and just watching their whole lives pass by through a screen. Sitting on a moral high ground that they've never climbed. pointing fingers while their own lives are just sitting out of balance. Because real growth is quiet, real responsibility is hard, and real accountability doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral to wake up early. It doesn't get likes to work on your family, and it doesn't get shares to fix yourself before you're trying to fix the world. But that's always where real strength lived, not in the noise, in actual action. So, yeah, I love America. Not because it's flawless, not because it's always got it right, but because generations after generations refuse to give up on it. Because disagreements here doesn't have to end in silence, because we can argue fiercely and still stand under the same flag. USA all the way. God bless America. Not as a chant, not as politics, as a responsibility. The greatest danger to this country was never its past. It will be the day that we inherit the freedom and we decide it was never worth protecting. And maybe that's really what this podcast has always been about for me. Not waiting for the world to change first, but choosing to move forward anyway. Because life isn't perfect, but it's always in motion. All right, I'll stop it there. Thanks always, guys, for being here, right here with me through it all. If you agree, if you disagree, or you fall somewhere in between, I'll always be here to have a conversation. I appreciate you guys more than you know. Thanks again for watching. This is Life Hack Bite-Sized Wisdom, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Always watch your back.